Alright, Peaks Challenge, Falls Creek 2024. This is a 10-hour training and preparation guide. Event profile. So we've got 3 climbs there, you can see in the profile: Tawonga Gap, Mount Hotham, Backer Falls, and you can see it's pretty lumpy between Hotham and Backer Falls. 235k, 4,000 meters plus climbing. You've got a 13-hour deadline to finish. This guide is aimed at the 10-hour rider. Key climbs. As mentioned, Tawonga, Mount Hotham, Backer Falls. We've also got 2 climbs coming into Omeo. The harder one is climb number 2, 3.2k, 6.2% average. We've also got quite a tough climb coming out of Omeo, 4.6k, 183 meters gain, 4.1 average. That's a tough one with fatigue on your legs, and hopefully you'll be trying to hold on the groups there, so it's quite a tough climb, that one. Tawonga Gap and Mount Hotham. So you've got 9.8k, 559 meters gained for Tawonga Gap, 30.5 kilometers, 1500 meters gain for Hotham. This is why Hotham is a pretty challenging climb, because you've already come off Tawonga Gap. So by the time you hit the top of Hotham, you've done 100k and 2,000 meters of climbing. And down the bottom there's Backer Falls, 1167 meters gained, 6.3 grade average. Training. Should have started by now. So you'll need to make training a priority in your life. So it will take over, and you'll be probably 10 to 15 hours a week. And note the importance of elevation gain per week. So you'll need to ensure you get that climbing in as part of that 10 to 15 hours a week of training. You need to be consistent, 4 to 5 training days a week for 16 weeks. You should already have a good aerobic base as a foundation for the training. So it's an aerobic event. You need good fat burn capacity. So Zone 2 base training should establish this. The event requires good muscular endurance and durability to cope with the extended climbs, the ability to repeat. So you get a lot of long climbs under load. Training, increase load progressively. So you got a 4-week block, 3 on, 1 week rest, lower intensity. Rest must be incorporated into your training and understood as essential for absorbing the training. So you need to listen to your body. If you're fatigued, rest. Monitor your heart rate, your resting heart rate. If that's elevated, rest. Rest is crucial for absorbing the training, so very important. We'll discuss some power to weight. So climbing event. So event requires high power to weight ratio, i.e. watts per kilo. So you've got 4,000 meters plus climbing. That's 4+ hours of climbing in this event. A good example, if you lost 1 kilo, that's roughly 1 minute per 1,000 meters of climbing you would gain. So you would pick up a minute per 1,000 meters. That's climbing meters, climbing time. Potential 4 minutes for Peaks Challenge. If you lost 3 kilos, you could pick up a potential 12 minutes of climbing time. That could be the difference for that 10-hour target time. Watts per kilo continued. Let's look at the Stephen Lane chart, and I'll start to talk about FTP here. The important one for us is that 60-minute time, 3 watts per kilo, down there in red. That's sustainable, 3 watts per kilo, which means you would need an FTP of around 4 watts per kilo, and 25% less of your FTP would be 3 watts per kilo. So you need to be able to do that sustainably on the climbs. 3 watts per kilo. Nutrition. We should all know this. Lean meat and fish, plenty of vegetables, plant-based, fruit, good fats. You are what you eat. You cannot possibly do 10 to 15 hours a week of training without a really good nutrition plan. It's pretty obvious. There's the food you need. Energy supplements, super smoothie. Do you need an energy supplement? Yes, you do. It's a extraordinary level of training you'll need to be doing. The recovery is key for preparing you for the next session. Otherwise, you're going to slowly decline, which means your training quality will start to decline. So you need to be hitting the weekly sessions relatively fresh. You will have some fatigue, but you need to be hitting them fresh. Nutrition is the basis for all of that. The smoothie is probably the quickest way to get that nutrition back into the body, particularly for muscle repair. So yes, doesn't matter what brand, but any of these type of products are ideal for post-training nutrition. I wanted to mention alcohol. It's a huge problem to try and do the training volume required, which obviously is quite stressful on the body and puts your body into a catabolic state, lots of inflammation. Alcohol will also cause inflammation, which will slow down the recovery process. So it will certainly have an effect on your ability to train with quality week after week. I would be removing alcohol for the next 16 weeks. It has to go. It will also help with weight loss. Drafting or pacing. So just going over the opportunities to draft for this event. Falls descent, no real gain there. The main thing is safety. Tawonga Gap, that's a climb, not really much benefit there. Basically climbing with others around you, just pick your pace, look at your power meter or heart rate, off you go. Germantown to Harrietville. Drafting has a benefit here. Be aware that there are all levels here, all rider levels, so there are lots of variations in pace and general bunch etiquette, so be aware. Mount Hotham climb, certainly a drafting benefit through the middle 10k section, otherwise you'll be climbing to your pace. Dinner plane stop, I've mentioned this, it's critically important to get there in 4 hours 30. I'll go over this in a minute, so we can pick up the Bicycle Network 10-hour leaders with an exit time of 4 hours 45 ride time. If you miss that group, you're still okay. You can still find ad hoc groups, but they won't be as organised and as efficient as the Bicycle Network peloton. Evidence-based approach to do your ride Peaks Challenge in 10 hours. So I'm going to look at the evidence here. It's all based around FTP. So FTP is used to set training zones. It's a theoretical measure of what you can sustain for 1 hour. So if you rode the total climbs in peaks at your FTP, that would be climbing for approximately 4 hours at your threshold. That would not be sustainable and possibly end in a DNF or slower than expected time. So the strategy is to set your expectation around 75% of your FTP, all threshold climbing. So as mentioned earlier, you would need an FTP potentially close to 4 watts per kilo to be able to ride the climbs at 3 watts per kilo, which would get you up and through the course at the correct pace. So a real test in training is to see if you can do 100k in 4 hours with 2,000 meters of climbing. You'll need to average 25 kilometers per hour. Okay, here is a real-world example of a 10-hour ride leader, not one of the Bicycle Network riders, but a person with a small group behind him. So we'll go over his stats. His FTP was 4.3 watts per kilo. So his target watts per kilo would be 3.2 for the event. What did he do? So Tawonga Gap, 32 minutes and 18, 3.4 watts per kilo. Mount Hotham, 1 hour 56, 2.9 watts per kilo. So if we break Mount Hotham into 3 parts, first 10k, 3.3 watts per kilo. Middle 10k, 2.4 watts per kilo. Final 10k, 3 watts per kilo, dead on. Climb out of Omeo, 2.8 watts per kilo. So Backer Falls, that's the hard bit, first 7k, 3 watts per kilo. Note, his cadence is 62 average. Remember, need to be able to push power at a lower cadence, critical for this event, particularly the last part. Backer Falls, 1 hour 34, 2.8 watts per kilo. So their ride time at Dinner Plain was 10 hours 50. So like I said, he was leading a group. So they didn't stop at Dinner Plain. They kept going and got to Omeo in 6 hours. Angler's Rest, 7 hours 20. So they exited Angler's Rest at around 7 hours 30. Ride time, 9 hours 55. The moving time was 9 hours 15. Note the calories there, 6,000 plus calories. Just looking at the zone distribution here. Zone 2, Zone 3. So mainly road in that beautiful all-day endurance zone, Zone 2, 4 hours. Tempo, 2 hours. So there's your climbs. One climb. The others were done with endurance. Threshold only 14 minutes. Again, all very comfortable aerobic zones. Still challenging, but very sustainable zones to be in for the event. If you're starting to see a lot of red, Zone 5, you ain't going to last long there. Okay, let's look at some key Strava segment times and splits for what's required for the 10-hour rider. Forced descent, 40 to 45 minutes. So fast descent, basically about safety here. No real gains taking risks on descent, so ride within your skill set. Hold your line, be predictable, keep left, use hand signals, scan ahead, head check as needed. Stay relaxed on the bike. Being on the drops, the lower part of the handlebar is the ideal ride position, descending. More stability and gives you optimal brake control. That's something that's trainable. So get up to Mount Donabuang and learn how to descend on the drops. You'll be much faster, you'll be more aero, and you'll have much more control of the bike. Look through corners, check speed as you enter the corner. Always think of a beeline in the event that you can't hold the line for whatever reason. So your whole focus on that descent is safety is at the front there. Of course, you're going quite quickly, but you are still not going to a level where you're putting yourself at risk. 40 to 45 minutes is fine. Tawonga Gap, 30 to 35 minutes, that's the opening climb. Hopefully you'll be at 75% of FTP. It will hopefully also feel a little bit easy. because your legs are so fresh. No need to go any quicker than required. There'll be plenty of riders on the climb. Just take your time. There's a great view at the top. No time to look at that. Probably would start eating as you're going up that climb. You won't be hungry, but important to get something down. Have a drink. It's a fantastically fast descent and no time for the views. 10-hour leaders have probably regrouped at Mount Beauty, the lead riders, so they'll probably still be behind you. Germantown to Harriettville. So this one you'll pick up ad hoc groups. It'll be a little bit all over the place. It's not as organised as later on. 35 to 40 minutes is fine here. Note from the turn out of Germantown, you are actually climbing. So you start going too hard there, you're going to pop your heart rate up and you'll really pay for it on Mount Hotham. So be conservative along here, save energy. Mount Hotham. This is probably, in my opinion, the hardest climb of the day. Yes, Backer Falls is tough due to the accumulated fatigue. However, Mount Hotham is long and relentless. It's a 2-hour climb at elevation that has some very steep ramps along the way. So Backer Falls, the hard part is early on, first 7K. Mount Hotham, it's a ladder, 10K, with all those ramps. So Mount Hotham's a pretty tough climb, remembering you've already done Tawonga Gap. You'll be hopefully riding to 75% of your threshold as planned, and you'll get up Mount Hotham in under 2 hours. You'll be at that 100K mark in just under 2 hours. Again, important to get to Dinner Plain in 4 hours and 30 to get us a 4-hour 45 exit with the Bicycle Network riders. If you are beyond 2 hours for whatever reason, you could bypass Harriettville, or you'll just hopefully catch ad hoc groups. It still doesn't mean you can't get 10 hours, but you won't have that organised peloton from Dinner Plain to Omeo to Angler's Rest. Also note there's a water stop halfway up Hotham. So Dinner Plain. So hopefully it's 4 hours 30 ride time. You've come in, you've got 15 minutes to refuel, fill your bottles, do whatever's required to get back out there on the road at 4 hours and 45 with the Bicycle Network 10-hour pace group. Don't forget, ride leaders will be on their start time, so there may be a small difference in your moving time and theirs. But essentially, 4 hours 30, get you 15-minute break, 4 hour 45 exit, and you're on your way to your 10 hours. Dinner Plain at Angler's Rest. So this is the time in the groups. You'll do it in around 2 hours 15. You'll be drafting most of the way to Omeo and Angler's Rest. It's a very efficient peloton led by very experienced riders, so it's certainly the way to go. You could reach speeds of 80 kilometers coming into Omeo. Be aware of that. There are some climbs, like I said, so hopefully you've done enough training, you've got a little bit of punch in the legs as required to get you up over those climbs and keep you in the group. Eating and drinking, essential. Backer Falls, the Widow Maker. So roughly the Bicycle Network group will get you to Angler's Rest at around 7 hours ride time. That gives you 3 hours to Falls Creek finish. When you hit the Backer Falls, be prepared for low cadence, 40 to 60 for the first 7K. It doesn't matter if you've got large gear on the rear, because of the fatigue and the grade, your cadence will be low. This is why people walk, because they haven't trained and they cannot cope with the high load and low cadence required. It's obviously a large battle with the mind on this climb, and you need to remind yourself how to battle that demon all the way. So you need to have some strategies here. Hopefully you've picked those up through training as to how to cope with that level of fatigue and grade and low cadence. You really need some torque on the legs. Torque to the legs. You need to have a strong rationale for the pain and suffering. So your reasons for doing this event need to be very clear, and you need to draw from those reasons on this climb. Importance again of low cadence. It needs to be practiced in training. You need to be able to cope with a 10% climb at 40, 50, 60 cadence. Otherwise you're walking. And if you walk, your time's you're going to jeopardize your finish time. You also won't be able to start the bike off a walk. You'll have to go 100 or 200 meters to a hopefully flatter section. And remember, the first 7K is relentless grade. So it really does jeopardize your tempo if you get off and walk. So even though at times it might seem as quick, don't walk. Okay, all the best. We'll see you at Peaks 2024.